significant speech. He speaks for a people who have shown remarkable courage and strength in the face of brutal aggression. Courage and strength that's inspired not only the Ukrainians, but the entire world. Putin is inflicting appalling devastation and horror on Ukraine, bombing apartment buildings, maternity wards, hospitals. I mean, it's god-awful. I was speaking about this with our commander behind me here, General Milley. I mean, it just is amazing. Yesterday, we saw reports that Russian forces were holding hundreds of doctors and patients hostage in the largest hospital in Mariupol. These are atrocities. They're an outrage to the world. And the world is united in our support for Ukraine and our determination to make Putin pay a very heavy price. America is leading this effort, together with our allies and partners, providing enormous levels of security and humanitarian assistance that we're adding to today, and we're going to continue to do more in the days and weeks ahead. We're crippling Putin's economy with punishing sanctions that's going to only grow more painful over time, with the entire NATO and EU behind us and many other countries. What's at stake here are the principles that the United States and the United Nations and across the world stand for. It's about freedom. It's about the right of people to determine their own future. It's about making sure Ukraine will never be a victory for Putin, no matter what advances he makes on the battlefield. The American people are answering President Zelensky's call for more help, more weapons for Ukraine to defend itself, more tools to fight Russian aggression. And that's what we're doing. In fact, we started our assistance to Ukraine before this war began, as they started to do exercises along the Ukrainian border, the Russians, starting in March of last year. We took the threat of Putin invading very seriously, and we acted on it. We sent Ukraine more security assistance last year, $650 million in weapons, including anti-air and anti-armor equipment, before the invasion, more than we had ever provided before. So when the invasion began, they already had in their hands the kinds of weapons they needed to counter Russian advances. And once the war started, we immediately rushed $350 million in additional aid to further address their needs. Hundreds of anti-air systems, thousands of anti-tank weapons, transport helicopters, armed patrol boats, and other high-mobility vehicles, radar systems that help track incoming artillery and unmanned drones, secure communications equipment and tactical gear, satellite imagery and analysis capacity. And it's clearly helped Ukraine inflict dramatic losses on Russian forces. On Saturday, my administration authorized another $200 million to keep a steady flow of weapons and ammunition moving to Ukraine. Now I'm once again using my presidential authority to activate an additional security assistance to continue to help Ukraine fend off Russia's assault, an additional $800 million in assistance. That brings the total of new U.S. security assistance to Ukraine to $1 billion just this week. These are direct transfers of equipment from our Department of Defense to the Ukrainian military to help them as they fight against this invasion. And I thank the Congress for appropriating these funds. This new package on its own is going to provide unprecedented assistance to Ukraine. It includes 800 anti-aircraft systems to make sure the Ukrainian military can continue to stop the planes and helicopters that have been attacking their people and to defend their Ukrainian airspace. And at the request of President Zelenskyy, we have identified and are helping Ukraine acquire additional longer-range anti-aircraft systems and the munitions for those systems. Our new assistance package also includes 9,000 anti-armor systems. These are portable, high accuracy shoulder-mounted missiles that the Ukrainian forces have been using with great effect to destroy invading tanks and armored vehicles. It'll include 7,000 small arms, machine guns, shotguns, grenade launchers to equip the Ukrainians, including the brave women and men who are defending their cities as civilians, and they're on the countryside as well. And as well as the ammunition, artillery, and mortar rounds to go with small arms, 20 million rounds in total, 20 million rounds. And this will include drones, which demonstrates our commitment to sending our most cutting-edge systems to Ukraine for its defense. And we're not doing this alone. Our allies and partners have stepped up to provide significant shipments of security assistance and will continue to help facilitate these deliveries as well. The United States and our allies and partners are fully committed to surging weapons of assistance to the Ukrainians. And more will be coming as we source additional stocks of equipment that we're ready to transfer. Now, I want to be honest with you. This could be a long and difficult battle, but the American people will be steadfast in our support of the people of Ukraine in the face of Putin's immoral, unethical attacks on civilian populations. We are united in our abhorrence of Putin's depraved onslaught, and we're going to continue to have their backs as they fight for their freedom, their democracy, their very survival. And we're going to give Ukraine the arms to fight and defend themselves through all the difficult days ahead. We're going to continue to mobilize humanitarian relief to support people within Ukraine and those who have been forced to flee Ukraine. In just the past few weeks, we provided $300 million of humanitarian assistance to the people in Ukraine and in neighboring countries. Tens of thousands of tons of food, water, medicine, and other basic supplies to support the people in need. Our experts on the ground in Poland and Moldova and other neighboring countries are there to make real-time assessments of the rapidly evolving crisis and get urgently needed humanitarian supplies to the people in need when they need it. And we will support Ukraine's economy with direct financial assistance as well. And together with our allies and partners, we will keep up the pressure on Putin's crumbling economy, isolating him on the global stage. That's our goal. Make Putin pay the price, weaken his position, while strengthening the hand of the Ukrainians on the battlefield and at the negotiating table. Together with our allies and partners, we're going to stay the course, and we'll do everything we can to push for and end this tragic, unnecessary war. This is a struggle that pits the appetites of an autocrat against humankind's desire to be free. And let there be no doubt, no uncertainty, no question. America stands with the forces of freedom. We always have and we always will. I want to thank you all and God bless you. And I'm going to walk over and sign this bill to allow the drawdown of those materials. And may God protect their young Ukrainians who are out there defending their country.
President Biden now sitting down to sign a directive authorizing the transfer of U.S. weapons, some $800 million in additional military supplies heading immediately to Ukraine. The president provided some important details about that. I want to go to our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes, on the North Lawn. Nancy, the president's rhetoric, appalling damage, god-awful atrocities, outrage to the world, depraved onslaught, all of that attributed to Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Yet a couple of phrases not there that President Zelenskyy earlier today asked for. Limited humanitarian no-fly zone, secondary economic sanctions on the Russians. Your reaction?
Well, I thought it was notable, Major, that, and I wonder if we want to listen into the president here. Looks like he's answering questions.
Nancy, as you well know, there's always that intervening delicate moment when we're not sure if the president is going to launch an impromptu press conference or not. He did not. Right, so carry on, please.
Nice try by those reporters. So what the president sought to do here was go into real granular detail about exactly which weapon systems he was going to be providing to the Ukrainians. And there's a reason for that. It's because those big systems that you just mentioned, the things that Zelenskyy pleaded with Congress and the nation to give him this morning, those he is not going to get. As of right now, the U.S. still hasn't signed off on providing him with more jets, and it hasn't signed off on imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine. So instead, what President Biden just detailed, 800 more anti-aircraft systems, those Stingers, 9,000 more anti-armor systems, those shoulder-mounted Javelins, 7,000 grenade launchers, 20 million more rounds of ammunition. And interestingly, Major, it was almost a throwaway line, but he said we're working on longer-range systems, anti-aircraft systems. What he was talking about there was this S-300 shoulder, long-range surface-to-air missile that Zelenskyy specifically mentioned he wants this morning. But that's a Russian-made system. The U.S. doesn't have it. They are instead talking to countries in Europe who do, most notably Greece, Bulgaria, and Slovakia. And guess where the Secretary of Defense is traveling in Europe this week? To Bulgaria and Slovakia, among other places, working to get Zelenskyy at least part of what he specifically asked for.
Nancy Cordes of the North Lawn, thank you so very much. David Martin is our national security correspondent at the Pentagon. David, listening to what the president said and having conversations, as I know you do, on an hour-to-hour basis with those in the Pentagon, watching the battle space that has become Ukraine, these military weapons and the transfers, how do they change the dynamic, if at all?
Well, first place, they got to get to the Ukrainians so that they can use them. And I think there's a great sense of urgency in delivering these weapons because they are being flown into Poland and Romania, transferred to trucks, and then driven across the border by land route into Ukraine. And if Russia starts to succeed in isolating these Ukrainian cities, then those supply routes are going to be cut off. So this is something that needs to be done urgently. And it comes with risk. The Russians have already said they will target the supply routes. Right now they can't do that because their airplanes can't fly freely over Ukraine. But sooner or later, Putin is going to have to make a decision about whether or not to go to the source here. And the source, of course, would be those transshipment points in Poland and Romania where the equipment is flown into. And one option would be to conduct a strike against those transshipment points. That, of course, would be an attack on NATO, and we'd be at war with Russia.
The president also made reference to drones, David. What implications would they have to address what you just described and the overall situation?
Well, the drone he is talking about is called the Switchblade 600. And it's really a flying Javelin anti-tank missile. It loiters around the battlefield, and then when it sees a target, instead of firing a missile the way most drones do, it becomes the missile and dives on the tank. It hits it from the top, which is the least armored portion of the tank, and it carries that same warhead that these Javelin anti-tank weapons have been carrying, which makes it a very, very deadly weapon against tanks. The one caveat to this is I don't know how many of these drones are actually in stock because the manufacturer only started producing them within the last year.
David Martin at the Pentagon, Nancy Cordes at the White House, thank you very much. Our coverage will continue on CBS News Streaming, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good day.
When these Holocaust survivors are gone, who will warn us to never forget? When some people don't know. Undeniable. The Truth to Remember. Streaming now.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Some Republicans are now accusing companies like Twitter and Facebook of targeting conservatives.
They've had unchecked power to censor.
I do not have